And now, for the next presentation, we have Manoel Lisboa da Silva. He's an expert on polymers, innovation, and new businesses. He will be talking about the development of new materials and their impact on the progress of society. Hello, Manoel. Good afternoon.
Tá no mudo ou tá ouvindo?
Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you now. Great. Thank you. Thank you for this conference. I've been watching the presentations and they've been amazing. I'm really happy to be taking part in the Congress. So good afternoon, everyone. May I start?
Então vamos lá. Pessoal, o que tem a ver, né, os materiais, como eles têm contribuído para os avanços tecnológicos da humanidade?
So how have materials contributed to technological advances in society? So far, we've been focusing on what's happening in the present and what will happen in the future. So now I would like to take you back to the past to understand where we are and how important plastics are to our society. But before that, I'd like to put things into context. I don't think I can change my slide. Oh, here we go. Got it. Okay, thank you. So let's put it into context. How are beliefs created? Because we have certain beliefs concerning plastics, that it's not sustainable, that it is harmful to nature. So I'd like to talk to you about how that happened, where this came from, and what the impact that has on society. So why do I do something one way or another? What is my behavior? What do I do? You know, what I do, what I say, what I write, what I do every day, that is strongly based on my beliefs, what I believe in. My actions are based on what I believe, and what I believe is based on my knowledge, which is what we've discussed today. So we're missing a little bit of education. That's why plastic is misunderstood by society. But I think we need to think about this for a second, because many people think that knowledge is just about a sensory assessment. So you read, you listen, you learn from your family, you learn from society, or you read about it on the internet. So based on that, I think that's knowledge that leads to a belief, but that belief was created based on data and not on information. So how can we change that? Then we move on to a different level where we start to have some reasoning about the data that's been compiled. The first part is how you analyze the data. So you conduct a critical analysis of the data. Then after that analysis, you have information, and based on this set of information, that's where your knowledge comes from, because then you're checking the information, you're checking the data, and that's what should lead to your beliefs. However, when you have a deeply rooted belief, it can stop me from acquiring new knowledge, and that means I'll stop making progress. So it's very important to have the right knowledge basis leading to the right kind of belief, and then based on that, you can make the right kind of decision. So what then? The basis for all this is my knowledge. If I have the right knowledge, I create right beliefs, and I make the right decisions. So let's go back in time. How did it all start? How did humans develop? How did they get educated? And how have materials contributed to all this throughout history? It all started when men stood up, and after they stood up, they were able to free their hands. And as soon as they were able to free their hands, they were able to handle two very important things for our society. First, weapons, tools. And in order for all that to happen, that's where materials come in. The first material we had, obviously, were natural materials, probably a stone. So when man realized he could throw a stone at an animal to protect himself or to feed himself, his quality of life changed, and he was able to compete for survival. So he first started using materials from nature, such as stone, wood, sticks. Then, after that, they built a bow and arrow, then bones, ivory. This was all available to them at the time. And then fire. They knew there was fire, but they had no command over fire. After they did, their quality of life improved. They had more free time because they didn't have to be hunting all the time. And they could store food. And they started having more time to develop their intellect. So time went by, and I ask you, what do you think was the second material men worked with? Let's think. They knew fire and they knew clay. So with fire and clay, they were able to build ceramic. So what changes in society once they're able to make ceramic? They're able to cook better, store better, and improve their quality of life. And then they started developing societies. They moved away from small villages. And, you know, we hear a lot, oh, plastics aren't degradable. Well, we're talking about 15,000 years here, and ceramic hasn't degraded either. For degradation to occur, you need to have the right environment. Otherwise, nothing degrades. So after they discover fire, ceramics, and they can control fire, they start to develop metals. And then what do they get with metals? Better tools and better protection weapons. So what do they use weapons for? Because when you have excess productivity, you need to store that. You need to store what you produce, so you start to create a better structured society. So you move away from a society where there's blood, language, and customs to the end stage where you have social layers. Why? Because you need soldiers to protect what you've produced. You need farmers. You share the work, and you also need accountants. You need to understand how to account for all that. And
You
with
will you will know how much I produced, and based on this, you start having what? One of the most fantastic inventions of our society, which was reading language, written language. Writing allowed us to transfer our knowledge both regionally as well as throughout history. So you are able to accumulate your knowledge. And one of the first materials used for this was ceramic. And obviously, later we evolved to other materials to allow for more knowledge and more disclosure, communication, and information. So let's think what happened in the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, we had a society based mainly on church and on kingdoms, and a farm based society. Within the Middle Ages, what did we have? We didn't develop a lot of material, but we had great development of engineering, the great cities, great bridges. And one thing that stood out here was cement, which allowed for the construction of public structures and infrastructure. At this time, we also had the development of another packaging, which was glass. We started having to transport some materials, mainly drinks. Drinks at the time, just to remind you, water had lots of contamination issues. So when you had an alcoholic beverage, you had less risk of contamination. So you had wine, then beer, and you needed to pack this to do this. And glass came about to meet this need. It already existed and it was improved. And when leaving papyrus and ceramic boards, and now we are migrating to paper. What does it allow us? It will allow to transfer more knowledge. At this time, we also started to use weaving equipment and also stronger iron. And then we entered a new age, which is the modern age, in which we start our industrial revolution. What was the icon material that we had? We start having still paper that increases in importance. And once paper grows, I start having the tradition of old books and translations. This was done by scribes. Imagine how long this would take to disseminate culture. And then we had the invention of the press. Many books could be printed now. And once I have several printed books, knowledge dissemination occurs at a large scale. And with this, I start having a society that thinks more and more. By doing so, I develop new materials, everything based on empirical knowledge. And the great material that changed a lot society was steel. It's important to notice that once steel is developed, I changed some structures of society. I had production concentrated in the hands of artisans, and then I start having serial production. This changes things a lot because before I would go where food was. I didn't have any transportation. Once I have serial production that is concentrated, I need something to distribute it. And then I start developing the transportation industry. Moving forward, then we go to our modern age. During our modern age, we continue furthering our development. And in the modern age, we also had the development of another material, or rather, the improvement of another material that brought forth many advances, mainly in the health area. When I have good quality glass, I can understand the system of microorganisms, and with this, I can care better for health. And this is based on another material. And then we have our current age, which is our contemporary age. What happens in this age? The way in which we saw society until this moment changed completely. We left from a collection point And now we see things from a different angle. What do we understand in the contemporary age? We understand the theory of the atom. So we understand how atoms work. We understand quantum physics. We start having more equipment, electronic microscopes, lasers. We use x-rays, and we start understanding much more the structure. Once we understand this entire structure, we get to something very important, which is the chemical bond. I understand the chemical bond. With this, what happens as of this moment? I go to a new phase. I understand the chemical bond. I understand and can build molecules. I am able to make chemical reactions. And with this, I am able to synthesize new materials, materials based not only on empirical knowledge, but rather on science. And this is what we are seeing 60, 70 years back. So we have the advent of new materials, which is exactly what happens when I have plastic and am able to design and manufacture plastic. So with this, I create independence from natural materials. I am able to use natural resources and design materials specifically for my applications. And what happens when we do all this? We, for us to better contextualize this, we are based on two pillars. We have raw materials and technology, and on the other hand, energy. So let's see what happened with energy. The first energy that I used to transform materials, to produce materials, to allow for our production, we need energy. And we see what happened with the energy evolution. First, we had wood, then we migrated to coal, oil, hydraulic energy, nuclear energy, natural gas, wind energy, and now working with photovoltaic energy. If you look on this side, what happens? Obviously, when I have wood, I don't need anything to burn wood. I can burn it on the ground. Once I grow the level of energy production, I obviously will need new materials to for these materials to be feasible. On the other hand, we already saw a lot about this revolution. So we had the Industrial Revolution, automotive, we worked with semiconductors, plastics, everything that we have nowadays, even the internet, it is based on semiconductors, fiber optics, which was one of the materials produced using science and materials engineering. If we think about now, besides the raw material and energy, another point has to do with the revolution that we will face, which has to do with food. So, how will material science and plastics will contribute to improve production in the field and avoid losses and significantly improve the support to this food area? So first of all, what does all of this mean? This improvement, these new materials that appeared in society, they allowed to improve significantly the quality of life of people. What happened? We saw a significant growth in population. And as of the Industrial Revolution, we see what happened with the number of people in the world. And this is where we start becoming concerned and we start talking about the implementation of the circular economy because we can no longer supply materials for this number of people in the world. Just to follow what has happened since the Stone Age, reaching semiconductors, high quality materials, carbon fiber, and others. As of the moment that I have a concentrated production, I need to distribute. To distribute, I have the need for connection and transportation. Connection and transportation requires the ways, hydroways, railways, roadways. And I will need another very important thing. I need to have packaging. We no longer consume where food is produced. This is produced in a concentrated way and we consume in different locations. So this is done in a distributed fashion. So this is why we need to use packaging. So what are the requirements that we have for packaging? It needs to protect both the product and the environment. It cannot contaminate, none of the above. It needs to be resistant, mechanically resistant. It needs to be light. I'm talking about transportation. I'm not going to transport heavy products. And you need availability and price to be competitive. And every time that we talk about transportation, reminding that we have concentrated production and distributed consumption, we need to talk about plastic. It is light, it is inert, it is resistant. Thinking about rice packaging, this is probably the most adequate material for transportation purposes, plastic. It is available, it is cheap, and something very important, it is recyclable and reusable. So many people still believe that plastic will not be reused or recycled. It is indeed recycled, though. And then we reach a very important conclusion. Plastic today serves for society for two very important purposes. First, it transports and protects. These are the two important aspects of plastic. The greatest use of plastic meets these two requirements. The first one, transportation. No material today transports better than plastic. And protection. We will show you several examples of where it applies in terms of protection. So, what is plastic? How does society see plastic? Today, society sees plastic, unfortunately, as an aggressive material. This is probably part of the story that it unfortunately is going down the wrong alley. And how do we see plastic? For those who know well the plastic chain, today plastic is present in several activities of our lives. It is being used for protection, transportation. We see this in the sanitation industry, doctors, food, transportation in cars, uh, electronic devices, leisure, energy production, civil construction, hygiene, agriculture. So these are all the sectors in which plastic is present today. And in reality, it is designed to preserve. Plastic preserves life, preserves society and the planet. What destroys is the incorrect disposal. It has several consequences. You lose raw material, you dispose of improperly, and also you waste energy. Let's talk about sanitation. That is very important for us. This means protection, protection of life. And where is plastic today? If we wake up in the morning, we already receive safely water that goes through plastic tubes. It was stored in a polyethylene reservoir. It was transported through the walls, through pipes. Today, we forget that pipes exist because they no longer leak. The old timers know exactly where all the pipelines were because they would crack, they would leak. And today, no, the plastic piping is very safe. So there's another very important aspect that it is very enduring. It will last at least 50 years. So it will convey water to us in a safe fashion for many, many years. After we use all the water, we need to dispose of it. Once again, plastic serves as protection and transportation. It transports all the sewage in a safe manner, and it protects the water table from contamination. So I don't see any other material that is capable of doing this better than plastic. Before we used to use ceramic tiles, so this would dump all the sewage in the soil. We also have it acting in sanitary landfills, the isolation films are of polyethylene. And also we have the issue of reuse water. It prevents against flooding, and it means energy savings as well as the availability of more water. And needless to say, you have seen a lot about this probably, the protection effect that plastic had with regard mainly to COVID now, and mainly for those working in the hospital environment. The production and transportation effects in agriculture, carrying seeds, fertilizers, in agricultural equipment, and in storage systems, and mainly transportation. With this, what happens? This part, I think it is easier to understand. Plastic serves several activities within our society. What is not very clear, however, that we need to focus on more and more is what happens. What happens with plastic after consumption? The first very important thing is that we need to reduce consumption for sure. Second, we need to reuse. When possible to reuse, we do. Third thing, we need to talk about recycling. The first order of recycling, the primary recycling that already occurs within companies. The second recycling is the post-consumption recycling, which is happening more and more. There is a part that sometimes mechanical recycling is not able to reuse. Will the plastic be thrown away? No. It is still a great source of carbon, which is raw material and energy. We already saw some speakers talking about this, the chemical recycling. Basically, we have two chemical recycling areas. The first one is pyrolysis, where I transform in oil or naphtha, fuel oil to be used in city halls, in the state, in companies. And the second one that I can also make is the synthesis gas. I transform everything into small molecules, and then I can make methanol, and from that I make ethanol, and then I reach ethylene, which is the what Braskem does today. So instead of using cane ethylene, I use that generated by the post-consumption plastic, and again, I can create excellent quality polyethylene. The fourth order of utilization, I can also do the energy recycling. I have a great capacity of energy. It has a heat power similar to that of fuel oil. So I can and must use this. Here, I would like to make an observation. Proper disposal. If you dispose properly, it will go to the landfill, or it can go to recycling or to the landfill. If it goes to the landfill, it can be immediately recycled, or if it stays inside the landfill, it will be a source of carbon that can be used in the future when we have technology that is economically feasible to use it as a source of raw material. There are already some companies doing this work. So dispose of correctly because it will transform itself into energy and can also become raw material. Now let's talk a little bit about the evolution, just to perceive how we did this. The former challenge was generation. The first phase was chemical synthesis of molecules. Second, I need to take these molecules and transform this into a productive process, which is what happens today. Petrochemicals already have an efficient and clean process with reused water. Fabiana mentioned this, how Braskem does this, seeking a balance in terms of carbon footprint. So the second generation company is extremely clean, that works in the highest quality standards. Third generation, they will transform resin in raw material. Excellent work was done in this area. Plastic had an image of being a poor quality product. Today, much to the contrary, it's excellent quality. So you can use this in any product because its characteristics are excellent. The great challenge now is to go to the fourth generation. What is the fourth generation? Understand how to recycle all of this. Here we have some very important.
Educar as pessoas a
The first
descartar.
challenge is to educate people to dispose of properly and teach them that this is an excellent quality material. Second, we need to develop technologies and start applying technology, not just showing that we have this technology, but also place this at a large scale. Know that this is being used as a source of raw material. And this has to do with a new concept, which is circular economy. And plastic is the material that better adheres to the circular economy. The recycled portion can be recycled, and the energy cost is much lower than other materials. And what do we have to do now? Work with all of this. Has this already happened before? Yes. We already had problems with waste, for example, food being thrown on the streets. Sometimes food is thrown in landfills. This happened mainly with sewage systems. If you go to the old civilizations, they didn't have any bathrooms. So we included a bathroom, then in-ground treatment. We had air pollution. We adopted technology to solve this. And here, what we are starting today is what the steel industry started 40 years ago. Spent steel had no value, but why doesn't this happen anymore? They created a recycling chain, and today it is transformed into raw material. This same technology, the same concept needs to be brought to the plastic industry. This is raw material. It needs to be considered as raw material. It is recyclable, and it is easier to transform post-consumption into another product instead of using fresh material based on oil. Based on this, what did we create? We created a series of beliefs. Can I walk under a ladder? Am I afraid of black cats? These are beliefs that we created, and we have no idea where they came from, but they have a very large impact on our decision-making power. Unfortunately, some beliefs were placed on plastic that it is not sustainable, it is not recyclable, and it is harmful to the environment. And we need to work on this. So how do we work on this? By means of education. The first thing that we need to do is start to develop the correct content that society can understand. Second, what we need to do is integrate this, communicate this, and work mainly on education. So we need to change beliefs and bring the right beliefs in place. And how do we integrate all of this? We need to stop thinking that the problem is only mine or the plastic industry. The problem is of all, including mine as a consumer. If I lose the option of using plastic as packaging of products, what other material will I have in its place? What cost will this bring upon me? And mainly, what is the environmental impact of this? So I think it's very important for us to join the productive sector, unions, professionals, the academia, schools, bring all of them to a same playing field. We set up this playing field, and with this, we bring correct information, and this information needs to be taken in a structured fashion to society. This is a great effort that requires education, investments, and think in an integrated fashion. The problem is not his nor his, it's ours as a society. So, what are our great challenges? They are education, engagement, technology, investment in technology. We need to rethink the biodegradable and recycling issues. Biodegradable can be used in some applications where it makes sense, where the collection system would spend more than the energy contained within it. So think with me. When I produce a material, I have from the collection, I bring this material, then I spend energy, I spend raw material, labor, and then I produce this material. Within this material or product, it continues with energy and raw material within it. So what do I want? That this disappears? No. I need to recycle this. When I come to the biodegradable concept, I spend all this energy and it arrives with all this energy. Will I just leave this go away and let it become CO2 or methane? So we need to rethink this. I'm not against this. We have some applications that make sense, but the correct is to understand that recycling is the best option. Sorry, reduction, reuse, recycling, mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, and then energy recycling. So within this logic, we are working on this, and we have this work called Plastic Experience, where we are joining some people to start working on bringing together this information and offering structured information that is correct to society. So I think that's it. I tried to wrap up within my time, and now I am available for questions. Thank you so much, Manuel Lisboa da Silva, a polymer specialist and new businesses. And yes, we have 3 minutes for Q&A that have been sent by Congress members. I will start with Roberto Uedo. Talking about impact to society, oftentimes plastic is seen as a villain despite its usefulness. But for example, when facing a pandemic, the amount of plastic used in medicine. However, oftentimes we deal with people without any technical knowledge that propagate incorrect information through social networks, etc. So how do we deal with this? So what is within our reach to change the perception of this valuable raw material? Perfect. First, we need to work on education. Education is the responsibility of all, not just of those in the plastic sector. So we need to start integrating universities, society, and everyone to convey this message in a correct way to the population and demystify that plastic pollutes. Plastic does not pollute, it is inert. We just need to educate. So, what can I do with people? I need to convey this message. I need to convey this message to schools. I need to question when someone says that they want to leave plastic because it'll be easier to sell their products. So I need to question, why are you doing this? Based on what are you doing this? So we need to change this posture with regard to when we see something against plastic. And what happens a lot is that we shout within our own walls. We complain and we need to take this information outside of these walls because we know that plastic is very sustainable. Let's try to quickly answer Luis Fernando Castronelli's question. the plastic that goes to landfills, does it become GHGs? No. Excellent question. Questionetti. Let's think of the following. 55 to 60% of what goes to the landfill is organic waste. This means what? It means food leftovers that are squandered. Plastic has a very small fraction of participation. It is inert material that can be used as a source of raw material to do mechanical recycling or chemical recycling or even energy recycling. So plastic, if it correctly arrives at the landfill, it was not impose an environmental impact because it cannot be left on the streets for sure. Excellent. Manoel Lisboa, we still have a lot of questions here, but unfortunately, due to time, I will thank you for your participation here in the Congress, and we will be waiting for you again for our panel at 5 p.m. Another message, we promote debates about innovation in packaging. And you can also look on Instagram for the plastic experience. And we're always working on communicating on plastic. Thank you very much. And congratulations once again for the event. Excellent. So Manuel has made his invitation. Moving forward with our agenda and some important messages, to access the simultaneous translation, just select your language in the upper left-hand corner.
And your materials in English and all the slide decks are also available on cbplastico.com.br. We also remind you that the attendance certificates in the 4th Brazilian Plastic Congress will be awarded to those who have 70% participation rate. And we also have a specific section for questions at the foot of our transmission screen, broadcasting screen. Hello? Yes, thank you.